MotorWeek is made possible by Tire Rack.
The concept of auto aerodynamics isn't new. Car makers have known about the advantages of slick designs for some time. But since the public wasn't too crazy about streamlining, nothing much was done along those lines until the need arose to improve mileage. Still, there was a time in days gone by when wings and airfoils were flying high in Detroit, before they became a market necessity. It was at the end of the 60s when racing gave us some of the slickest cars you were ever likely to come across. They say that racing improves the breed, and Detroit carried that one step further. They believed that winning on the racetrack also meant winning in the showrooms, the battleground, the NASCAR Grand National Stock Car Circuit. Throughout the 60s, both Ford and Chrysler had winning race teams on their payroll and new designs on their drawing boards. Designs they hoped would give them that slightly fairer than fair advantage. Now, these are special versions of regular mid-size models, and they represent that era's last round of one-upmanship between the NASCAR superpowers. They were only offered to the public for one purpose, so their wind-cheating bodies would be legal for racing. Under NASCAR rules, manufacturers had to sell a certain number of each of these models to qualify as a production car, although they sure didn't look or act much like a production car. This Ford Torino Talladega's nose was lower and longer than the standard Torinos. On the high-banked ovals, that gave it a 5-mile-an-hour advantage. It also made it the NASCAR champion in 1969. The street car got a 428 Cobra Jet engine that made 335 horsepower, and it would push the Ford through the quarter mile at just under 15 seconds. Owned by Bob Pugh, this is one of only about 200 Talladegas still on the street. The Mercury Cyclone Spoiler 2 has the same front bodywork as the Torino, but it wasn't quite as successful on the racetrack. 519 Spoiler 2s were made, but they had to make do with a tighter budget at Mercury, and the Cyclone only got a 351 small block. But this Spoiler 2, owned by Chick Sheezer, will still cruise effortlessly at 100 miles an hour with a top speed of almost 160. Later in 1969, Chrysler escalated the aerodynamics race with the Dodge Charger Daytona. It got not only a sloping nose, but a big rear spoiler. Both helped it to fly to the 1970 NASCAR Championship. Power for the street Daytona came from a 440 4-barrel V8 rated at 375 horsepower. A 426 Hemi engine was optional. Tim Kirkpatrick has more than 2,500 hours of restoration wrapped up in this Daytona. And that's not a bad investment today, since they stopped making the Daytona at number 505. The Plymouth offering, called the Superbird, shared the Daytona's tail feathers and nose. Built in 1970, it landed just in time to share the Charger's racing success. That year, NASCAR changed its rules, though, and car makers then had to make more of each car to qualify for competition. So that meant that nearly 2,000 Superbirds were built. This is Don Miller's car, and it has the 440 6-pack engine that gives the car a few more horses than the Daytona. Quarter-mile times are in the low 14-second range. But apparently, too much success prompted NASCAR to change its rules once again, to keep any one manufacturer from getting too great an advantage. So by 1971, the street versions of these high-bank oval racers were gone. And maybe that was for the best. Since there were only a limited number of each of them made, when you actually meet one of them on the streets, it'll be an encounter you're not likely to forget.